Welcome back to Norse Teaches Science. No witty thing today. This is Biology Edition. We're still in ecology. And I'm Mr. Norris, and today we're going to talk about something called population. And you're like, I know what population is. Well, yes, but let's talk about some stuff that goes along with population growth, and understanding populations of even species and humans. So by the end of this video, you should be able to say, I can explain how population growth is represented and what affects it. So the first thing we need to talk about is something called limiting factors. These are anything that prevents something from living in an area. Think about it. What would prevent you from living, say, in the Antarctic? I'm hoping you say it's cold. I'm one of those people. I don't like the cold. I don't like snow. I hate snow. As a kid, I love snow. As an adult, you hate snow because it deals with a whole bunch of other stuff. But that's one reason. I mean, we don't have the fur or anything like that, so we would need coats. What would prevent a fish from living in the desert? Water. So those are some limiting factors. There's other stuff too, like food availability and everything. But if it limits something, it's called a limiting factor. So some other examples. So they can either be abiotic. We covered this before. A means not or none, and bio means living. So non-living factors like temperature, rain, soil. You're not going to be able to have, say, a squirrel live in the ocean. They need soil. They don't swim the whole time. They don't breathe underwater. Biotic factors would be the living factors like food or predators. If there's too many predators, something can't live there. Or food, if they don't have the right food, they can't live in some place either. So these things limit how and where animals and species and even humans can live. So why are limiting factors important? They influence the carrying capacity, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. Carrying capacity of an ecosystem. And they also are there so the population does not grow unchecked. Because if a population continues to grow unchecked, resources become depleted, you start to degrade the land, the area. So a carrying capacity is the maximum number of individuals that an environment can support. So you say you have a fish tank, you can't place 300 fish in that fish tank and them all live and survive and be able to thrive. It probably could only hold maybe 10 max, depending on what size fish tank it is. If it's one of those little small ones, you probably can only support one. But that's another thing. The size of the environment determines how many can live there. So what happens when an environment is above the carrying capacity? First, what that means that there's too many individuals. There's too many individuals there. So in nature, things will die if it's over the carrying capacity. We call it an overshoot. It goes over the carrying capacity. This little blue line here I'm going to trace is carrying capacity. When you go over it, it's called an overshoot. And then you have this die off. And it will die. And it continue to do this until it can kind of stabilizes itself. So that means since there's more individuals, are going to have more die, and so there's going to be an increase in the death rate. What happens if it's below the carrying capacity? That means there's room to grow. So there'd be an increase in birth rate. So you're still trying to get up to the carrying capacity. So coming back to the fish tank analogy, this fish tank here is above carrying capacity, way above. You already see some fish falling out and some fish dying. This one over here is right below it. They could probably fit maybe one more fish in here, but then that will be it. So, but they live comfortably. They all have space. They can swim around. They're happy. If you look, these are sad. These are happy. So you really want to really try to stay below the carrying capacity. Now, when we look at population growth, there are three graphs that we can look at with population growth: a linear growth, and I say it weird, which means line, a J-curve growth, and a S-curve growth. And if you kind of look at the words, they kind of describe what the graph's going to look like. Um, so let's talk about linear growth, which means constant growth. As time goes on, population is increasing. It's a steady line going up. It's constant growth. J-curve growth is kind of what usually it looks like. You start off really slow, and then you go up, and you keep going up. And usually, this is called an exponential growth. Resources are unlimited, so the population can keep growing and growing and growing and growing. And an S curve growth shows the carrying capacity. It kind of looks like an S. You start off slow, then you build up rapidly, and then you level off. And we call this a logarithmic growth curve or an S growth curve. This is more a realistic pattern of most growths. Animals in the wild would usually exhibit this type of growth. Sometimes you do get the overshoots and the die-offs and the overshoots and die-offs, but most times it looks like this. This is usually because there's limited resources or limiting factors, and hopefully it would level off at some point. What about human population? How are we growing? We are growing at a J curve. We currently do not know what our limiting factors will be for the planet. At some point, we probably will figure it out, and we'll probably transition more to an S curve, hopefully. But right now, population just keeps growing and growing and growing, and it will keep growing for the foreseeable future. Now, is this causing a problem? Yes, we have many problems that can result from this. You can talk about global warming. You could talk about pollution. You can talk about resources not allocated to everyone equally. There's a whole bunch of problems you could talk about with the human population growth. Versus, you can also go back to living in a city versus living in the country. I currently live right outside a little city in the more rural area, and so I don't see as much pollution as normal people. But I also see some problems from the growing population as well. The city that I live near is actually growing at a very steady rate. And the most populated countries as of right now, this is 2020. I am making this video in May, and the most populated countries are China, followed by India, and then the United States. Now we could talk about the growth rate of them, and the United States is rapidly growing, but China is declining. I forgot what India's looks like, but those factor in too. So we could have changes in between all of this as time goes on. But if you want to know a little bit more about population growth, there's actually cool websites out there. You can go Google it. And you can actually see the birth rate, death rate, and the population growth for the current time, and see how many people live on this planet. But this is Mr. Norris. I hope you learned something today, and I am out for this video.